All right, learning objective 2 on the bottom of 157. Prepare closing entries and post-closing trial balance. What are closing entries?
Closing out like certain accounts.
And how do we know which accounts to close?
The book tells us.
The book tells us, yes.
The temporary account.
We have temporary accounts and we have permanent accounts. Which ones are temporary?
The ones that close out.
The ones that are usually used up within one cycle of business operation.
Yeah. So if it happens only within one business cycle, which would be our revenues and our expenses, we close those out, right? And dividends, because they only happen within one cycle. What about our balance sheet? What are those accounts called? They're not temporary, they're permanent, right? So anything on our balance sheet is permanent, and we never close those accounts. We will never write a closing entry for a balance sheet account.
Okay, so a permanent account would be like a cash account
Yep.
or
Appreciation.
Accumulated depreciation. Depreciation expense is a temporary account.
okay, got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay, top of 158, illustration 4-4, really helpful list as to what is temporary and what is permanent. Revenues, expenses, and dividends are all temporary. Assets, liabilities, and equity are all permanent. Okay, and this is accounting, so we have a procedure for how to do this, right? We have 4 closing entries. Number 1, we close our revenue accounts. Number 2, we close our expense accounts. Yes? Number 3, we have been putting the revenue and the expenses to another temporary account called income summary. Think of it as like a holding place, right? How many of you have worked in a restaurant? Right? You know the counter where the food should never sit for very long? Think of income summary as that counter. It goes there for a hot minute and then it leaves. Okay? So we're going to put income and we're going to put expenses to our income summary account. And then in step 3 or 4, depending on your order, we're going to take it right out and stick it in retained earnings. Yes, you could do that in one step. Yes, that makes logical sense to some of you, but that is not the procedure. Okay? And then I think steps 3 and 4 are interchangeable. To me, I want to close income, close expense, move them both out of income summary, and then do dividends. That's not, well, the book does it this way, but not everyone thinks that way. Like, whatever works for you. Close income, close expense, close both of those out of income summary to retained earnings, and then the last one is close dividends. If you want to do dividends first because it's easier, that's fine. I don't really care. But those are the 4 closing entries you need to make. Okay, so if I'm thinking about my revenue accounts, what is their normal balance?
Credit.
Credit. How am I going to close that account?
With debit.
With a debit. Okay, so my journal entry to close my revenue accounts is going to be debit revenue, credit,
Income summary.
income summary. My new short-term, quick, temporary account. Okay? So always start with the account you're closing, and then you know your income summary is just going to be the other half of the entry.
And you put it like to record closure of revenues.
To close income accounts.
Revenue account.
Or revenue accounts, sure. Okay, so what's the normal balance of my expenses? Debit. So how am I going to close them?
Credit.
With a credit. To close expense accounts. Normal balance and dividends.
Credit.
Debit. How am I going to close it? With a credit. Okay, so page 159. Yes. So the illustration 4-5 on page 159, the red arrows are coming from a side of the T account, right? So we said we're going to close expenses with a credit. So the arrow is coming from the credit side of expenses to the debit side of income summary, right? Every credit must have a debit. Every debit must have a credit. We close out our revenue accounts with a debit. So the credit is going to go to income summary. See, the arrows are on the right side. You can even write on your T account, right? Debit, credit. So you can see how you're forming your journal entry. Okay? For the income summary account, the goal is to have a debit balance, right? Excuse me. The goal is to have a credit balance. We want to have more in there in the credit side than we do in the debit side, because once we put them in income summary, they just represent income and expenses. Right? Let's write it out. And actually, let's just use these. Okay, how much do we have in revenue? Let's not get too crazy.
$1.
No, more than that.
1,000.
1,000. How much do we have in expenses?
$999.
$999. Okay, how do I close my revenue?
Debit revenue, 1,000.
Debit revenue, 1,000.
Credit, income summary.
Credit, income summary. I'm going to abbreviate IS just for sake of time. Okay, this is how I closed it. How do I close my expenses?
Credit.
Credit. How do I write my journal entry?
To record closing debit, income summary.
Debit, income summary, credit, expenses. Right? Okay, so here's my income summary. I credit my revenue, and I debit my expenses. What does that look like? It's exactly where it was, right? My revenue maintained a credit balance. We just moved them from one account to another. So what's my net income? This is my balance, right? Now I need to close income summary. How do I close income summary? I'm going to debit income summary. And where is it going?
Retained earnings.
Retained earnings. Okay? So the point I was trying to make is that revenue has a credit balance. My revenue maintains its credit balance as it goes through income summary and gets to retained earnings.
Is that why retained earnings also has a credit?
Yes. Yes. So I increase retained earnings by my net income with $1.
Can you have not a negative, but a debited income summary?
Sure. How come?
Net loss?
Because I had a net loss. Yes. So then it would reduce my retained earnings, right? I had to use some of my reserves to cover my current period expenses. So it would be a credit, yes. Okay, so illustration 4-5 is the whole flow. So if you want to put amounts in this diagram and then write out the journal entries like I did, if that's helpful to you, if the arrows aren't enough, right, to show that the credit goes in as a debit. Are you picking up what I'm putting down, or no? Which part?
I don't know. I'm just all of this.
Okay. Maybe we can chat after? Okay. Okay, top of 160, illustration 4-6. Here are our closing entries. We will always have those four. Number 1, close revenue. Number 2, close expenses. And remember, even though I just drew one expense account on the board, we're going to have many, right? And we close them all out. Then number 3, we close what we just stuck in income summary to retained earnings. And then number 4, we close our dividend account. Okay, so once we do all of these closing entries, what do we have left in revenue?
What do we have left in?
Uh-huh. What's left in revenue?
It'll be nothing.
0. What's left in expenses?
0.
0. So after I have done my closing entries, I prepare a post-closing trial balance. What's going to be left on it? If I've closed a bunch of accounts, what's going to be left?
Be done.
Oh no, there's going to be something. What's left?
Your income?
If it's not temporary, it's
Permanent.
permanent. So our post-closing trial balance is just a trial balance of our permanent accounts. Okay, so if we closed it out, it doesn't show up on our post-closing trial balance. Illustration 4-8, page 162. Post-closing trial balance only has our permanent accounts because we have closed everything else.
Do you still need an income statement?
Yes, but we'd already done that. Post-closing trial balance is after all of the financial statements. We did our worksheet, we did our adjustments, we prepared our financial statements, we issued them, they're done, they're gone, it's over. Now we close out our temporary accounts, and then we prepare our post-closing trial balance, and we are ready to start November.
So this isn't done every month or period?
This is usually annual.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, page 163. This book has been keeping up every time we make an adjustment to our accounts, right? It's keeping kind of a running book going. So page 163, illustration 4-9, these are the updated ledgers, including our closing entries. What do you notice? It's very similar to what you noticed on our post-closing trial balance.
It's all permanent.
It's only our permanent accounts. All of our temporary accounts have been wiped out, right? Because we are now going to start a new business cycle. Top of 164, you can see the temporary accounts with the closing entries. They all have 0 ending balances. Questions? Okay, bottom of 164, do it number 2. Cover the answer. I would write these in your notes. I'm not turning them in, but I would write them out.